We are keeping the train of international guests going on. We've got one from the United Kingdom, just south of London, Todd Adcock. So glad to have you. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Really good, thanks. Really glad to be on. Been a keen listener to the podcast for a while, so great to be a guest.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, when I started to learn more about you, I was like, I can't believe we've not featured this guy just yet. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. But here's what it is, all right? And in the interests of kind of helping everybody, no matter where they are in the game, what station, skill level they are, that first tee shot or the first hole or those jitters, those nerves,
Hmm.
none of us are immune to them. So help us navigate that. I want to call it important. I mean, it has a say so. It's a tone setter for the round. Help us navigate those first tee nerves in the first shot, please.
So the big thing I always think about with first tee nerves is that the anxiety builds kind of almost as you get into the course. As you get in there, you get to the course. Maybe some people have got to the tee a bit earlier for their tee time. Maybe you've got there a little bit late. Maybe you're a bit under prepped. Feel like I haven't played for a couple of weeks, a bit stiff getting out of the car, a couple of late stretches, that kind of stuff. So we all know that kind of scenario. But really, the first tee shot for me is all about pleasing everyone else around the first tee, rather than realistically, it's just about getting started.
Yeah.
Something I say to clients all the time is like, if you're going to run a marathon and run 26 miles, you're not timing how quick you get off the start. You're just trying to get going.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the first tee shot is taking the need for it to be your Sunday best. It just needs to be a playable shot that gets you going, gets you moving, and taking a lot of the pressure over having to, like I say, have that amazing first tee shot. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, you will, and we all love it when we do. We love that kind of cheer in the crowd and everyone kind of um, giving ourselves some praise. But at the same point, really, the first tee shot just needs to be sticking to what you know, sticking to your routine. And then once you're there, take the pressure off of what everyone else thinks. Because I know from personally, for me, I'd much rather be the person that comes in who shoots a great score on the leaderboard and they think, did you see where he hit it on the first tee? How the hell has he shot that score from there?
Uh-huh.
Rather than just having that amazing tee shot that impresses everyone.
I need to ask this, and you speak of you because you're a very good player in your own right. I want to ask this. I remember the US Open at Shinnecock Hills a few years ago. I was teaching a young professional who had qualified, and it was like all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and nervous and stuff. And so he's going to the first tee for a practice round, and Padraig is on the tee. So I say to him, Harrington. So I said to him, I go up to Padraig. I'm like, hey, do you mind if we join you? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. So my guy, Shinnecock Hills, travels downhill to the right. Some folks go with less than driver, some folks drive it. My guy goes with fairway metal and he hits it down there, and Padraig steps up and just blitzes the driver. Misses the fairway, but hits it hard. And so walking down there, my client, Steve, says to me, he goes, why do you driver? I'm like, why don't you ask him? That's why you're
Yeah.
playing alongside. And Padraig's response was, he goes, are you kidding me? Or I can't do the accent, but he goes, first tee nerves, US Open, big driver head, more place
Yeah.
to miss hit versus the small little fairway metal. Anecdote to say to you, Todd. Um, if the player is just not feeling it, do you advocate you go to like a go-to club or something for that first tee shot?
Yeah, I think you need to have sometimes, and again, depends on skill level, but sometimes you may have a couple of different driver shots. As again, a better player may have like a Tiger would always talk about his little low bunt, and then you'd have the high bomb and different driver shots. But certainly for most golfers, you just need something that really is going to get you in play, get you moving, something you've got some confidence in. That's the thing, because your job there on that first tee is to get yourself underway, really. So
Mm.
I'd always advocate for people to, I think it's a big thing. You need to kind of know what your pattern is. You need to know, are you a left to right player, a right to left player? If you put £100 on the line and said it's going to go left to right, right to left, you need to know which one it's going to be. Um, and then from there, really, like I say, just think of it more as getting yourself underway. Another thing that I always think about in the first tee is that if I hit a bad first tee shot, I've got 17 holes to put it right. But if I hit a bad one on the 18th, I'm out of time.
Yeah, love it. One more thing. That first tee shot, it people tend to want to just try and get it over with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you got some thoughts on that too. Whereas you got to kind of own your stage a little bit there, even though you're nervous.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and we all hear a lot of psychology come into it. Really, it's a big part of the game, where having a pattern, having a process, having things that you do to try and help you take your mind off of it, because our brains naturally will run away with ourselves a little bit. Um, so I think it's a key to have to stick to what you do. I think sometimes, especially when you see whether it's first tee or you've got a putt on the last hole, we saw Ludwig hole, a lovely putt to win at the weekend there, and you'd be amazed how quick it looks like he hits it. I know he's a fast player anyway, but that's just his process. The worst thing to do is to get under pressure and take longer, because you've got more and more time for stuff just to creep in, and before you know it, the demons have got you.
All right, Todd Adcock, great player in your own right. You've turned to instruction, which I kind of love us former players who now teach because you
Mm.
bring a playing spin to it. But you're on Skillist and you give course management lessons on there, which I think is cool because most folks on Skillist are analyzing golf swings.
Yeah.
So please tell us about you a little bit before we go on.
So I guess me background, just loved golf as a kid. Played loads. My dad got me into it. My mum was great. Can't thank her enough for ferrying me around to loads of different junior competitions. Um, Growing up though, we didn't quite have the sort of facility or the kind of backing, if you like, to go and travel to some bigger events. So I played quite a lot locally. And I guess for me, I kind of branched out of my playing and kind of pushed myself up the ladder, where a friend at the golf club helped me out a little bit and I managed to play in some bigger events. So
Yeah.
then all of a sudden I played in three bigger events, one of them being the English Amateur, and then came through and won it. So it was kind of a bit of a kind of, I don't know, one of these kind of like American dream kind of stories, really.
Okay. Yes, I love that dream thing. And I want to just pause you for a second, go, okay, you didn't go and play all the big events because now this is for parents watching this. We've got the aspirant young child, and it's like, well, I've got to play AJGA or I've got to do this, you know. Well, you just played local stuff and then you got a chance in the big one and you went and won the big one. It's not like you have to play in the big stuff right away, do you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just competitive golf wherever it is. I think it's great just to kind of get you out there. For a kid, for me, I just, even in my own kind of sort of little pond, if you like, I just enjoyed being in competitions, trying to better myself all the time. Played in what I could and whatever I could play, and I played well. And then sometimes I think um, it's when you get to those bigger stages sometimes that you kind of really can test yourself to see where you're at, I think. And so when I did that, like I say, I had good finishes, and then it was a strange one because I think in the June, I'd won kind of the local or our county, if you like, championships and stuff, and been a good player in the county. And then 2 months later, I was standing on the first tee at Muirfield, leading out the England team for the home internationals, being the English champion. So it was kind of one of those kind of like real kind of skyrocket moments, really. And that then facilitated me. I think I played for England for about 4 years from there, with so old teammates to be a lot of guys are doing well now, like Tommy Fleetwoods and Andy Sullivans and Eddie Pepperell, all those kind of guys, Tyrrell. So we travelled, yeah, had about 3 or 4 years playing golf with him, having loads of fun. Um, and then again, as we kind of turn pro, everyone kind of takes different scenarios. For me, I got injured. I was about to turn pro, so that kind of set me back from kind of really pushing on. Um, then I had a little while kind of sort of struggling a bit, sort of self-funding on the mini tours, as a lot of us tend to do if you kind of fall off of that kind of sponsorship platform, and then turn to coaching because I just love golf. I love teaching. I always had a really keen interest in golf and the whys, and like I say, then having that kind of playing background, I just really wanted to kind of take that to help other people. And also, I think I've still got a little bit of a itch to scratch playing wise, so I'm still quite competitive myself. Still playing a lot of the local stuff and try and play some of the bigger national events. And I mean, I'm 39 now, but I've still got aspirations to kind of potentially do well for the next few years, and then maybe push on to seniors tour stuff.
There we go. Okay. Cool story. I mean, it's inspirational, if you will. Let's get back to the
Mm.
construction of it. I was like, I've looked at a lot of your stuff, and I'm like, you know, this is kind of the course management masterclass we can have here. But before we go there, you texted me back, and you're like, wait a sec. I'm going to pardon the pun. You said to me, stop. You know, this is how my whole course management playing theory is built around the stop principle.
Yeah.
So let's go there before we deal with things like finishing the round and stuff. So tell us about the stop principle, what it entails, how it can help golfers of all skill levels.
So for me, the big thing about the online playing lesson thing that I'm doing, which I call Troubleshooting with Todd,
Hmm.
is basically all around helping you shoot better scores. I teach at a driving range. The ball sits on the mat exactly the same, whichever ball you put down there.
Hmm.
The scenario is the same. So there's so much of the game that I guess I teach, if you like, in the driving range, but I can't teach because the lie of the golf ball and what's in front of you dictates how you've got to attack it and got to approach it. So I look for a way to try and take that to people and to help people on the golf course. And the stop principle, really, again, it's a bit of a psychological cue as well. It's a way to stop people taking that kind of really quick shot. Let's say you're 4 under your handicap, 3 shots to play, you hit your first bad tee shot of the day, and all of a sudden then you race to it, get a bit panicky because you're trying to get in the clubhouse as quick as you can. You hit it too quick, then you duff it, then you've got to try and chip out again, and before you know it, you just escalated the score because you haven't really had a process to think through it. So the stop principle was just based around, again, it works in the way of saying, right, stop. So it halts people in their tracks a little bit. The S would stand for strike or stance, and basically meaning, can I get a strike on the ball? What's it lying like? Can I get a stance to it? That's the first thing you kind of look at.
Yeah.
T becomes trajectory. If I'm going to hit this shot, let's say we're in the trees, what's the avenue? What's the window that I need to try and hit it to? O then becomes options. What are my options? I've got a gap over here, a gap over here, a gap over here. Or am I in a situation where I could potentially get a drop from a ruling? Is there a ruling that I could? Because again, the rules are there to be used in your favour as well as against you. That's what people forget. I think they're all there to penalise you, but sometimes you can use it in your favour if you're in a certain scenario.
Yeah.
Um, and then P becomes probability. So if I take that line, what's the probability of that one? If I take this one, what do I think? Because sometimes what I always find is we're told all the time to chip out sideways. Now, the problem is if you've got, let's say, 200 yards still to go to the pin and you chip out dead sideways, you've got another 200 yards to cover.
Hmm.
You're not really, you're not going to hit the green. You've got then another shot to get onto the green, then a couple of putts. And we've kind of made that kind of double bogey most of the time.
Uh-huh.
But if you can kind of look at kind of evaluating the shot and having that kind of educated amount of risk, saying, well, this avenue is 10 out of 10, but I've got 200 yards in. But this avenue, I reckon that's 7 out of 10, and I could probably get it to 110, 120 away from the green. Now that becomes a really good option because you've got a decent chance of success. You can make another 70, 80 yards on it. You've got
Hmm.
a better chance of getting on the green for the next shot. So you can start to reduce your score if you just take that time to really evaluate where you are and the potential risks and pitfalls, really.
You know, um, it's very insightful that you would share that. And it's so very true because and I'll use the term playing smart or
Mm.
doing the right thing, most golfers inherently think, well, unless they're golfers at the highest level, because the elites are always looking for the quickest way to the green, and they
Yeah.
them see windows that I don't see. But anyhow, um, but the club golfer, the high school golfer, sometimes the college golfer, they think smart is just taking the simplest scenario out there. Well, you
Mm.
like assess the options. Taking a little risk on might not be a bad thing as long as have thought it through thoroughly and you're able to do the shot, I guess.
Yeah, and you've got to think of it as two rolling scales. So you've got difficulty of the shot and then probability of success. And as one goes up, one goes down. And all you're trying to do is find the tipping point where you can get roughly both of them to let's say 7 out of 10. So again, I'd always say to clients all the time, I want you to have roughly a sort of 70% chance that you can do that. And then say, okay, well, there's fair odds. I'd kind of, people that gamble with worse odds. You just kind of take it on to say, well, that way there's enough gain in there for me to take that on. So I think it's a sort of shot that I know I can play. The lie's good enough for me to take it on, and I've got enough gain there to warrant doing it.
I, I don't think you've said this. If you have, forgive me. But as
Mm.
you're saying that, I'm like, this stop principle works from the very first shot on the hole through the very last.
Yeah,
There's
that's oh yeah,
in
yeah.
trouble.
Yeah, and so the whole the online course I do, it's basically there's so many scenarios that you can take it to, but it's more of a little kind of almost like a little psychological cue to say, right, come on, stop. And I think of it myself from playing days, kind of when I was playing at the peak of my powers and playing a lot, we weren't using rangefinders.
Yeah.
And having that extra time to pace out a number and to really kind of work it out gave you time to actually process stuff. So if you hit a bad shot, you had to kind of go away from it, work your yardage out. You probably had a little bit more time then whilst you're kind of walking to kind of take the emotion out of it. Now,
Hmm.
what I always see is, and the the famous sort of stat comes out that the difference between a scratch handicap and an 18 handicap is only 2 birdies around. The other 16 shots are bogeys or worse.
Hmm.
So really, if we're going to be better, it's turning those potential disasters of doubles and triples in how many bogeys can we make? How can we turn it to a bogey or even a par sometimes, just to take the big numbers off rather than go flag hunting?
Gosh, I want to make a statement. Have you build? I've often said, look, as an on-course announcer, I'll sometimes make the joke that it'll be an easiest par three, and the guy will hit it close but make a three. And then
Mm.
someone will say, well, missed an opportunity. And I'm like, I've never seen a bad three ever.
Yeah,
Okay. But I'll say this to a lot of golfers. I've never really seen a bad five either. I mean, you can make a five on a par four, but you're right, it's not the end of the world. It's when it gets to
yeah.
sixes and sevens and stuff that the work life becomes harder.
Yeah, and certainly if you hit a tee shot, let's say offline or in the edge of the trees, and you are in a scenario where you've got to chip out, all of a sudden you've turned a par four into a par five because you've got an extra shot to get yourself back into play. So then you almost have to reframe what your target is for that hole and say, well, if I get a par out of this, it's like getting a birdie. Because realistically, if I can make a bogey, that's now my par because I've got to take an extra shot to get myself back on the straight and narrow.
Mm. I want to keep going with stop because in my head right now I'm seeing this big red stop sign.
Hmm.
And I'm talking to golfers now, competitive golfers, whether it's at your club championship or amateur golf, whatever the case might be. I was on the course with a course playing lesson the other day with a good young golfer who comes out and stuffs it on the first few holes as one under, and then all of a sudden hits it on a par five behind the green, 15 feet, fast downhill. Putt lips out, hits the slope, and releases like 40 feet beyond. Well,
Hmm.
the birdie attempt turns into a double. So you go from under par to one over, and the world is coming to a close. And I want to have that big red stop sign saying, stop your mind. You are now making mountains out of molehills. Dear
Yeah.
elite golfer, I'm sure you can talk to this as well as anyone.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's no one's immune to it either. Like at all levels, your brain just kind of runs away with you. Um, Sometimes I think, for me personally, everyone's going to deal with it differently. For me, I had to let my brain run and then bring myself back in. I had to get those kind of thoughts out of my head to then clear the desk, if you like. But certainly, the idea of the stop is just that. Because what tends to happen is when those people, let's say, like say you're on for your great round, you hit one bad shot, and we all see people do it. We played loads of golf that we'd call like chunterers, and like say, and I've been guilty of being one in the past, where you kind of, oh God, I've done this, and oh now it's behind a tree, and oh God, now that's in the way, and before you know, you go along, but actually, if you take the emotion out of it and just start to have a procedure to say, right, stop, shock shoes, that kind of big red sign, stop you in your tracks, right, stop. Then have a process to go to it. So, like I say, you go through those principles. Because basically, you're kind of looking at every shot and kind of going, what route does the club need to get to the golf ball? So if you look at the lie, look at how it's sitting, what route does the club need to take? Then from there you start going, what stance is going to facilitate that? So where do I now need to stand? And then you go, okay, well, what now techniques? Whether I need more wrist hinge, less wrist hinge, more out to in, into out, however it might be. What route am I going to get that club down? And then from there you think about, okay, well now how is that going to affect the loft of the club? And then the potential trajectory. Okay, so now what club do I need to give me the flight that I need? So part of the catalog of videos is a two-part piece that I did, which I sell as a course as well, which is I call it a shot shaping masterclass. But it's
Right.
basically
Mhm.
telling people how when you want to shape the golf ball, how the loft is going to change, how your trajectory is going to change, and how then your distance is going to change. So if you've got let's say the 150 shot with a 7 iron, let's say, in the video, I think one shot I'm playing with a fade with a 4 iron, launching at let's say 10 degrees, and then when I draw it I play it with a 9 iron and still launch it at 10 degrees.
Yeah.
So when you get the more extreme curves, kind of teaching people to do it, but when you get the more extreme curves, to try and get your windows in the right place, because I see it all the time where people would be in some longer grass and try and chip out from underneath or to get underneath the tree, but there's still some decent thickness of of rough there to get over. And they're so busy looking up at the window of the tree they're trying to get under, they forget about the grass they've got to get over, and they smother it just in front of them.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So when you're then going, okay, well, I need to put it back, and then you start to look at what the base loft or what club you need to try and give you the flight window. It's just helping people have those skills and tools to really, like, as a professional player, it's things that we kind of take for granted a little bit and we do automatically. But then for your average golfer, they might not necessarily have that skill set to be able to work it out.
Yeah. Okay. This is going to be controversial. I'm going. This is what we do. We are folks who live listening to this way down the track. It's in 2025 on the PGA Tour right now, basically in the pro game. One of the huge social media, boiling points is pace of play.
Hmm.
And I'm listening to you going, hell yes, this guy is preaching right now. And then I'm sure there are folks going, okay, well, I'm slowing down play. But the truth is, you're going to play better if you had fewer shots. Okay, that's the first. You're going to play faster. But here's the thing I'm doing. Like you saying, when you get to the ball, I guess, yeah, we are. When a golfer's playing well, all that stuff happens easier. When you're playing badly and you're in trouble, that's when you have to. It's almost mandatory to go through your stop principle, to take the time to, because ordinarily most golfers are panicking and rushing when they get in a situation that requires more intellectual application.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those ones where even when you go through it, it can sort of seem like a longer process, but it can be done really quickly. That's the thing. But the key to it is having that barrier, that stop, that, like I said, that big red stop sign in front of you to shock you into saying, right, come on, let's switch on now. Think of like Ernie having the glove on, glove off, that little cue that he'd have. And then from there, having a structured process to go through. Because again, those decisions may, if it's a simpler scenario, can happen really, really quickly. And it's only the ones if you're really in trouble, which may not happen that often, hopefully, that it might take a little bit longer, but it's certainly not going to be outside the amount of time you've got to play. And for me, when it comes to pace of play, I always say players can take as long as they want, but for you, it's using other people's time as well as your own. So if you're the third person to play, you need to be ready to go because you've got two people in front of you who have taken time. If you use their time as well as your own, you should never be late.
Yeah, true. Lovely stuff. Let's get back to shot shaping.
Mm.
I'm a bit of a stickler for this because for the longest time I've been teaching golf since 1996. I was a video camera guy that was basically comparing everyone to the aforementioned Ernie Els. And then I grew up a little bit as an instructor and I learned more and I became wiser. And now I find myself, at 54, fixing a lot of shots with curvature.
Mm.
And instead of, delving into the inner workings of the swing, unless something's really off,
Mm.
helping them understand how to shape shots to fix problems.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I want to ask you this one, because you talked about the 9-iron, 4-iron scenario where it was a draw and a fade. I'm challenging a lot of golfers on the practice facility to pick 2 or 3 clubs and try and hit them the same distance.
Mm.
Because that's one of those things, to your course management thing, in my opinion, that a golf course sometimes asks you to do.
Mm.
A lot of folks, they got like one club that makes it go 150 and one where they don't have the ability back and forth in terms of yardage to massage shots a little bit and try and make another implement do the same sort of thing, but with a different trajectory.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a big thing because again, if we're thinking into the sort of in the tree scenario, some of your windows might be up there. I
Yeah.
say there might be some gaps in the tree, so then you want to try and know roughly how that ball's going to launch to try and take off through a bigger gap that's slightly higher up. And definitely, I think it's part of the skill of the game, isn't it? It's that I think for me, I always say there's a big difference between learning to hit the ball and learning to play the game. And it becomes part of that playing the game side of it rather than just learning to hit the ball. So, like I say, if I think of myself teaching on a range, the ball sits there the same. You're hitting the same shot roughly. You have 100 golf balls in the basket, but you get on the golf course. You now take those skills that you've learned to hit the ball, and then you've got to learn how to adapt those skills to produce the shot that is required.
Love you. I'm so loving it. It's so much sense, and I'm sure people are watching you or listening to you and going, "Yeah, I get this." But I do want you to put a bow on this topic for me for a second,
Mm.
because it takes a lot of discipline to actually be true to this mindset. Because it's so easy to drop into the alternate where it's just 100 balls that I'm just box practicing away there, or when I get on the golf course, I'm still trying to force square pegs into round holes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think like I said, and I think that's where sometimes your practice comes in and going splitting between the block to random practice. I think I'm always a big one for sometimes on the range. I did it as a kid. You think of me and other friends, like how much can you draw it, hitting crazy shots? How high can you hit it? The big flop shot as kids, you all try and play with the road going behind you or something, trying to sort of play it and have that little bit of pressure or whatever it might be. You're just trying to play those extremes. And I'd always sort of get people when they're on the range, even if it's the last 10 balls or 10 balls of your bucket of 100, practice some extremes. Just learn what's possible. Because then when you go to the golf course, the shot you're trying to play, you know if you can actually do it or not.
Yeah.
Because I see so many people try and play a shot where they'll go, oh, they may have seen a fantastic one or an old Tiger video of one of the crazy ones he played back in the day and think, ah, it's all right, I've seen Tiger do it, I can do that. But they never practice it, they never try to do it, they don't even know if it's possible. So
Yeah.
if you go to the range and you practice, how much can I curve this? How much can I curve? How high can I hit it? How low can I hit it? You start to learn not just your 9 windows, but you learn where are the goalposts more than anything else.
Yeah. Love you. This is really, really good stuff. And I think you've sort of given us the answer to one of the questions. This was a video I saw of yours on your Instagram page. Um, and it was like you were standing there, um, just in a beautiful green English fairway with some trees behind you. And you're like, okay, here we are. We're on the 15th hole. And I'm paraphrasing. And you're playing very nicely, and I make a mistake, and all of a sudden, this round basically, which started off in a Ferrari, is now finishing in an ambulance kind of thing.
Mm.
You talked about finishing rounds. You've kind of dropped the breadcrumbs for us, Todd. But
Mm.
people, we've started. Now we understand the stop principle. Help us finish those rounds because we've all been there, where it's like, I'm going to have my career day or whatever the case might be. I'm going to beat my guy. And then all of a sudden you fumble it. Yeah, and it ends up one of those days where you're like, oh gosh, did I really do that?
Yeah, yeah, and I think we all get there. I think for me, I think back to myself, sort of playing when you get to a good score and I say you're trying to get in. The big thing is if you're having a great day and you're, let's say, 4 under your handicap through 15, you've been doing a lot of really good stuff already. So
Mhm.
the key, a lot of it, is to kind of keep doing what you're doing. The decisions you would have made 4 or 5 holes ago, don't try and then go protective and safe just because you're trying to nurse it into the clubhouse and die over the line. You're just trying to make sure you're still, to a degree, playing aggressive to conservative targets, if you like. It's always a nice phrase I always kind of use.
Mhm.
But certainly breaking rounds down into sort of sections of, or smaller sections of the round. So I would always kind of look at what holes are coming up. So have I got any, thinking for myself, like as a pro, opportunities as a par five? Are there any danger holes where tough tee shots or longer par fours? You're starting to kind of say, okay, section it off. It's almost like now it's restart. You're back to being wherever you are. Your job now is to have 3 holes in front of you. What's my target score for those 3 holes? And then you can start to focus on how I'm going to achieve that score for the next 3. So you really like narrow that, put your blinkers on a little bit, almost forget that you're carrying this extra baggage and weight of being 4 better than your handicap. Because a lot of the time we tend to just compound it and compound it and compound it, which adds up the pressure, adds up the tension, adds up the anxiety. If you can get to kind of 15 being 4 under and then go, right, new game, here we go. And again, it takes a while to kind of have that discipline, but it's new game. This is what's going on for the next 3 or 4 holes. Then a lot of time you can kind of keep yourself at more of a level.
Okay. I want to say this because we live in an era of strokes gained at the
Mm.
professional game. But in the amateurs, we all have handicaps, but I don't think people really apply them as well. And what the point I'm trying to make is every golfer kind of has my personal par. Like, let's say I'm even par, right? And I'm not the longest hitter, and I'm now got few holes left, and the 16th hole is a 450-yard par four.
Mm.
On the PGA Tour, let's say the stroke average on the head hole is 4 in the third. So it's playing a
Mm.
third of a par. So some folks are making big numbers, some folks are making bogeys, one or two folks are making birdies. Us regular golfers, we get there, we're like, okay, I got to make a par. And sometimes we might overthink it or make a bigger deal than what it is, where, okay, my par, if I make 5, yeah, I'm still in good shape. Are you feeling
Yeah.
going? Yeah, I want your take.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, 100%. I think that the big thing with it is just taking out the big disaster. So that the like, and that's where the again the principles come in. Is that like I said, we've all been there. We hit one bad tee shot and we've been hitting it beautifully down the fairway all day. It's making sure that we take that, we have a rational way of thinking about it to get ourselves back in play, to then make sure we're kind of making bogey rather than double triple. Because bogeys, if you're, let's say, if you're 4 under par with a few holes to play, bogey's not doing you any harm really. It's fine. You're still three better. We've got a few holes still to go. You're getting through a tough hole. It's the triples, it's the quads that then all of a sudden then you end up escalating that, and then that carries over to the next hole. Then you probably bogeyed the next, and then doubled the next, and before you know it, you shot a couple over your handicap.
You've got a very pragmatic way of thinking about it. Now, look, you've been one of the top amateurs in the world, played professional golf. The injury curtailed the playing career. Um, is this a learned skill? Because when you talk about it, you help me to go, it's okay if I make five on this hole. Where when I'm playing, the emotionality runs rampant. So the question I'm pitching you is this like very sort of accounting style of thinking about the game. Is that a learned skill, do you believe? Can everyone adopt this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we've all gone through spells. Sometimes I mean, I have to catch myself a bit more now, I guess, as I'm older. When I was playing more, I think I was, as much as I was pushing hard and trying to do my best. But I think because I was having more opportunities to play and playing a lot and playing very well, you knew the other opportunities were coming. I think now is always a case of now when I play, because I don't play as often, it's easier to get frustrated. And I think it's looking at your own ability to manage that sometimes. So for me, again, like I've sort of alluded to a little bit earlier, I like to kind of vent to a degree, get it out, reset, and then move on. What I've always been quite good at is actually kind of just a phrase I like is like, don't get mad, get even.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you may get frustrated with something, but then if you have that process of right, okay, let's get up and down for it. Let's get it out. Let's get it in place. Give myself an opportunity. But I definitely think it's a learnt skill. I definitely think it's something that with good processes and rationality to it, you can really do it because it really is just emotion that takes on. Because if the frustration then turns to anger, that's when we start to kind of lose it a little bit for a few holes. And then sometimes it can even happen earlier in the round. You can go out with a lovely practice, lovely warm up, great expectations, start badly, get frustrated, and then before you know it, on the eighth hole, you have a blinder from eight inwards. But you think,
Yeah.
oh, I've just wasted that getting out the blocks.
I've seen that in the pros last week at the Farmers Insurance Open. Rory McIlroy, of all people, playing
Mm.
alongside Scotty Scheffler in the final round, wants to make a statement. Coming off a win to the couple of weeks prior, bogey's the first hole, and then you can almost see him trying to force the issue. And then
Yeah,
just Scotty shoots like 4 under on the front nine, and then Rory, you could see him just kind of settle down and play it beautifully coming in.
yeah.
I want to ask you this kind of is the parting shot. I ask people, and I'm like, okay, when it comes to practice or preparation, where should the focus lie? And I know this is generic, but I'm guessing, Todd, that what you're saying about the stop and what you're saying about the shot shaping masterclass that you have on Skillist, that the practice involves everything in your game, not just the golf swing. You're working on short game, pitch shots, bunk shots, anything you're likely to encounter.
Mm.
I'm wanting you to challenge folks to go and work on all aspects of the game and not just fixing your golf swing.
Yeah, definitely. I think when we see it all the time, and clients will come in when you've got the flight scope running in the background, all the launch monitor numbers,
Fun stuff.
everyone's chasing zero.
Yeah.
Well, I'd always sort of a lot of the time turn around and say, look at all that, look at all those 30 data points. None of those are zero. And you could do that for shot after shot after shot after shot. There's very, very few that are going to be zero. You're not chasing zero, it's the blend of them. And I think that's where sometimes I think the swing coaching can get a little bit kind of robotic in a way. We start to sometimes lose that little bit of skill of being able to hit the big curving shot or the big fade or the big high one because we're always trying to stay inside a certain window. I'd say definitely shape of shot isn't it's not a detriment. It's something you need. The straight one's the hard one. We
Mm.
just need to know which way it's going to curve, and then we can judge how much.
But help us practice properly. I I
Yeah.
I understand your illustration there with the launch monitors. That is a mistake that a lot of folks make. But I don't think people work on all 14 clubs in their bag enough. They
No.
tend to go to just a few. Driver, 7 iron, and sometimes the putter.
Yeah, quite often I think the most worn club in the bag is the one that goes 150 because most range have got a 150 marker. That tends to be one I see quite a lot.
Awesome.
And then the drive will come out for the long drive competitions on the range bays now a lot of the time. But certainly, I think when you're practicing, I think it's creating that kind of playfulness and creating games. And I think it really works really well when you've got a friend with you and you can have a bit of competition. Again, a lot of the ranges now have a little bit of tracking on them, whether it's top tracer range or whatever it is. They'll have a curve number, they'll have a peak height number, they'll have a launch angle number, they'll have all these different things that you can kind of have a little bit of competition around. And it's just that little bit of, like I say, thinking of when I was a kid, just challenging each other to play different shots.
There's skill in that, and it's the strange
Yeah.
thing when you agree that when you start to hit those outliers, that your golf swing actually becomes a little more efficient to be able to pull those off.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the time when you practice on, if you learn to practice on both sides of the spectrum, you can find the middle ground a bit easier a lot of the time. We all know the kind of story of I've gone from hitting a big slice, now I'm hitting a big draw, and then I'll kind of the Goldilocks effect, bring it back to the middle. And I think that really works. If you can learn to do the opposite, then you can learn to balance it out really well.
Beautiful stuff, Todd. I'm sure all the fans, viewers, and listeners are going to want to find more from you. You are available on Skillist. Please share the social media website and the Skillist handle so that they can go and find you some more.
Yeah, so Skillist, they can just go to skillist.com/, then it's the @ Todd, TODD. That'll take you straight to my profile. And then most of the social media stuff I do is on Instagram, which the handle is @Toddy, so TODDY, Adcock, ADCOCK. And they can find me there.
Yeah, okay. Toddy Adcock. Just for folks, I texted Todd. I'm in the States. He's in the United Kingdom, England. And I texted him this morning saying, please remind me what we were talking about because I had missed I'd missed the Y in Todd Adcock. And I was searching for you everywhere, big guy, and I couldn't find it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh gosh, I made the mistake. So
Yeah,
make the same mistake as me, people.
no, that's right. Yeah, so it's Toddy's just a nickname that I kind of use. So the name would be Todd, so TODD, and then the surname is Adcock, which is ADCOCK. But on Instagram, I have the Y in there just because Todd Adcock was taken already. So yeah, Toddy Adcock on Instagram, and then Skillist / @Todd will take you straight to my profile on there, and then you can find everything about me through the Skillist. Create a really nice kind of little front of house page there, or a little landing page for us, which would be great.
Don't move the Y of Toddy into the last name of Adcock, people.
Yeah.
Todd, I appreciate you. Great stuff. Thanks for joining us.
No, really, thanks for having us on. Pleasure. Like I say, listen to the podcast for a long time, and great to be on.